In a Nigerian village where cruelty was the norm, one orphan dared to show mercy to a beggar woman everyone despised. What she didn't know was that this woman had been watching, waiting, testing them all. And when the truth finally came out, the entire village would wish they had chosen differently. The rooster's crow pierced the morning darkness as Ngozi balanced a clay pot on her head, making her way to the village stream. Her bare feet knew every stone on the path, though her mind wandered to darker places. 3 years had passed since the accident that took her parents, leaving her at the mercy of Chief Okafor's household. 3 years of sleeping on a thin mat in the kitchen, of eating scraps, of Grace's sharp words and sharper hands. At the stream, voices floated through the mist. "That witch woman was by my compound again," one woman said, wringing her wrapper. "I threw dirty water at her. She brings bad luck wherever she goes." Mom Kiru, another spat the name like poison. "The day she came to this village, our troubles began. She should be driven away." Ngozi filled her pot quietly, thinking of the old woman who lived in a crumbling hut at the village edge. 5 years ago, Mom Kiru had appeared from nowhere, speaking in a strange accent, her eyes holding secrets the villagers feared. They blamed her for every misfortune, from failed crops to sick children, though Ngozi had never seen her harm anyone. Back at Chief Okafor's compound, Grace was waiting with a list of impossible tasks. "You call this clean?" She struck Ngozi across the face, pointing at an imaginary stain on the floor. "Wash it again. And if you're not finished by noon, you'll go without food." Ngozi scrubbed until her knees ached, but Grace found fault anyway. By afternoon, hunger gnawed at her belly as she fetched firewood from the bush. The path led past Mom Kiru's hut, where young voices shouted with cruel glee. Chidi, the chief's son, led a group of boys in their twisted game. Stones flew through the air, striking the old woman's tattered clothing as she shuffled along with a walking stick. "Witch! Witch!" they chanted. "Go back to where you came from." Mom Kiru said nothing, her face calm despite the assault. She simply continued walking, as if the stones were mere raindrops. But when her eyes met Ngozi's across the distance, something passed between them, a recognition that made Ngozi's heart skip. Ngozi wanted to shout at the boys to stop, wanted to run forward and shield the old woman. But fear held her feet frozen. She was nobody, nothing. Who would listen to an orphan girl? The boys would only turn their stones on her. That evening, as Ngozi lay on her mat in the darkened kitchen, she couldn't shake the image of Mom Kiru's face. The old woman hadn't cried or cursed her attackers. She had simply endured, with a dignity that seemed to come from somewhere beyond this village, beyond this world. There was something in her eyes, ancient and knowing, that made Ngozi feel small and ashamed. Sleep came late that night, filled with dreams of stones and silent suffering. When Ngozi woke before dawn, she knew something inside her had changed. The fear was still there, heavy in her chest, but beneath it burned a small flame of decision. She couldn't stop the entire village's cruelty, but perhaps she could ease one person's pain, even if only for a moment. Tomorrow, she would find a way to help Mom Kiru. Tomorrow, she would be braver than today. The next evening, Ngozi's hands trembled as she wrapped leftover yam and stew in banana leaves. Grace had retired to her room, and the compound was quiet except for the chirping of crickets. Stealing food was forbidden, an offense that earned brutal punishment. But Ngozi couldn't forget Mom Kiru's hollow cheeks, the way her bones showed through her worn clothing. The path to the old woman's hut seemed longer in the darkness. Palm trees whispered overhead, and twice Ngozi nearly turned back. What if someone saw her? What if Grace discovered the missing food? But her feet kept moving forward, guided by something stronger than fear. Mom Kiru's dwelling was worse than Ngozi had imagined. Moonlight shone through holes in the roof, and the door hung crooked on broken hinges. Ngozi hesitated at the entrance, suddenly unsure. "Mom Kiru," she called softly. "Come in, child." The voice was surprisingly strong, rich with warmth that didn't match the poverty surrounding it. Inside, Mom Kiru sat on a low stool, her weathered face breaking into a smile. Ah, the girl from the stream. I've seen you watching. I brought food, Ngozi said quickly, thrusting forward the package. It's not much, just what was left from dinner. I'm sorry I couldn't bring more. Mom and Kiru took the food with hands that seemed too steady for someone so old. Why? She asked, her eyes searching Ngozi's face. Why would you risk yourself for an old woman everyone hates? Ngozi sat on the dirt floor, suddenly feeling tears prick her eyes. Because no one else will. Because I know what it's like to be alone and hungry and afraid. Because it's wrong, what they do to you. And yet you were afraid today, when the boys threw stones. I was, Ngozi admitted, shame burning her cheeks. I'm sorry. Fear is natural, child. Kindness despite fear, that is strength. Mom and Kiru unwrapped the food but didn't eat it. Tell me about yourself. In the flickering lamplight, Ngozi found herself talking. She spoke of her parents, killed when their car swerved to avoid a goat on the road. She spoke of becoming Chief Okafor's unpaid servant, of Grace's cruelty, of dreams she'd abandoned of finishing school and becoming a teacher. Mom and Kiru listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally. Dreams don't die, child, Mom and Kiru said when Ngozi finished. They wait. Like seeds in dry ground, waiting for rain. There's no rain coming for someone like me, Ngozi said bitterly. Isn't there? Mom and Kiru's eyes caught the lamplight, and for a moment they seemed to glow with their own inner fire. The universe sees everything, Ngozi. Every kindness, every cruelty. Nothing goes unnoticed. They talked until the moon climbed high. Mom and Kiru spoke in riddles about patience and justice, about the importance of choosing right when choosing wrong would be easier. Her words carried weight, as if each sentence held meanings Ngozi couldn't quite grasp. When Ngozi finally left, stepping back into the night, she felt different. Lighter somehow, despite knowing punishment might await if Grace discovered her absence. Mom and Kiru stood at her broken doorway, watching Ngozi go. May your kindness return to you tenfold, child, the old woman called softly. Walking home through the darkness, Ngozi felt strangely peaceful. She had done something good, something right. For one night, she had been more than an orphan, more than a servant. She had been human, reaching out to another human in need. Tomorrow she would face Grace's demands and Chidi's sneers. But tonight, she had touched something larger than herself. Though she couldn't name it, couldn't understand it, she felt it warming her chest like a small sun, driving back the darkness. Behind her, in the doorway of the ruined hut, Mom and Kiru's eyes glowed softly in the night, seeing far more than an orphan girl walking home. She saw a soul being tested, a heart being measured. And she smiled. Grace discovered the missing food 3 days later. Her scream brought the entire compound running. Thief! There's a thief in my house. She grabbed Ngozi by the hair, dragging her into the courtyard. You ate my food, didn't you? Greedy, ungrateful child. I didn't eat it, Ma, Ngozi said, the truth on her lips though she knew it wouldn't help. Then where did it go? Did it grow legs and walk away? Grace's hand connected with Ngozi's cheek, the slap echoing across the compound. Chief Okafor emerged from his house, adjusting his wrapper. What's this noise? The orphan has been stealing our food. Grace shrieked. After all we've done for her, clothing and feeding her out of the goodness of our hearts. The chief's face darkened. Take her to the square. Let everyone see what happens to thieves. They dragged Ngozi through the village as people emerged from their compounds. Word spread quickly, and by the time they reached the square, a crowd had gathered. Ngozi's heart pounded as they tied her hands to the whipping post. This girl has stolen from my household, Chief Okafor announced. Let this be a lesson to all. Spare the rod, spoil the child. Pastor Samuel stood among the crowd in his white robe, watching with folded arms. Sister Ruth, Ngozi's mother's friend, pushed forward. Please, Chief, she's just a young woman. Perhaps mercy. Silence. Grace cut her off. Would you encourage theft? Is this what you preach in that church? Pastor Samuel nodded sagely. The Bible says spare the rod and spoil the child. Discipline must be maintained. The whip fell across Ngozi's back, and she bit her lip to keep from crying out. Again and again it struck, each lash sending fire through her body. Through the pain, she kept her eyes fixed on the ground, refusing to reveal where the food had gone. Let them think she ate it. Better that than bringing trouble to Mom and Kiru. When they finally released her, Ngozi collapsed to the ground. The crowd dispersed, most faces showing neither pity nor pleasure, just acceptance of what they'd witnessed. Sister Ruth tried to approach, but Grace waved her away. She needs to walk back herself. Let the lesson sink in. Ngozi dragged herself home, each step agony. That night, lying on her mat with her back screaming, she thought she couldn't move. But as darkness settled over the village, she found herself standing, found her feet carrying her toward the edge of town. Mom and Kiru's hut appeared through the darkness, but voices stopped Ngozi at the bush line. Chidi and his friends surrounded the dwelling, carrying sticks and stones. Come out, witch! Chidi shouted. Time to leave our village. We're done asking nicely, another boy called. We're burning this hut tonight. Something inside Ngozi snapped. Pain forgotten, she ran forward, placing herself between the boys and the hut door. No, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. Chidi laughed. Look, the witch has a protector. The orphan thief. Move aside, Ngozi, another boy said. This doesn't concern you. I won't move. Ngozi spread her arms wide, though they trembled. You'll have to go through me. Gladly. Chidi shoved her hard, sending her sprawling. Pain exploded through her injured back, but she scrambled up, returning to her position. The boys closed in, and Ngozi squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for blows. But a voice stopped them, gentle yet carrying impossible authority. Enough. Mom and Kiru stood in her doorway, and though she was small and frail, something about her presence made the boys step back. The girl has chosen kindness over safety, compassion over comfort. Remember this day, children of Okara. Remember when you see what follows. Her words hung in the air like a prophecy. The boys shifted uncomfortably, suddenly uncertain. Chidi tried to rally them. She's just an old woman. Don't let her scare you. But the moment had broken. One by one, the boys drifted away, throwing threats over their shoulders that sounded hollow in the night. Mom and Kiru helped Ngozi inside, laying her gently on a mat. Her hands moved over Ngozi's wounds with surprising skill, applying herbs that cooled the burning. You came even though you're hurt, she said softly. Why? Because you matter, Ngozi whispered through tears. Even if no one else thinks so. You matter. So do you, child. More than you know. That night, Ngozi slept in Mom and Kiru's hut, the old woman watching over her with eyes that never closed, never blinked, glowing softly in the darkness with a light that came from somewhere beyond this world. Morning came, and Ngozi woke with a start, expecting agony from her wounds. But when she moved, there was no pain. She twisted to look at her back and gasped. The welts were gone, replaced by faint pink lines that looked weeks old instead of hours. How? She breathed. Mom and Kiru stirred from her corner. The body heals when given proper care. The herbs I used are very effective. Ngozi wanted to question further, but Grace would be furious if she didn't return for morning chores. She hurried back to the compound, slipping in before anyone noticed her absence. In the following days, Ngozi continued her visits to Mom and Kiru despite the increased harassment from villagers. Word had spread about her defense of the old woman, and now both were targets. Children threw stones when Ngozi passed, adults muttered about curses and witchcraft. But strange things began happening. One evening, walking home from the stream, Ngozi found money lying in the dust, enough to buy a small meal. The next day, Chief Okafor's dog, which always snarled and lunged at her, suddenly sat and wagged its tail. Small miracles that Ngozi couldn't explain but gratefully accepted. At Mom and Kiru's hut, the old woman had begun teaching her to read using old newspapers. Ngozi's eyes devoured the words, her mind soaking up knowledge like parched ground drinking rain. "I want to be a teacher," she confided one evening. "I want to help children learn, especially those like me with no one to care." "You will," Mom and Kiru said with certainty. "Your path is longer than you think, but it leads exactly where it should." The peace shattered when Grace's prized goat died suddenly. The animal had been healthy, intended for sale at the market to fetch a high price. Grace stormed through the village, screaming about curses and witchcraft. "It's that old witch," she shrieked. "Ever since she came, nothing but misfortune. And now that orphan girl consorts with her." Chief Okafor called a gathering in the square. "This has gone too far," he announced. "The witch woman must leave, or we'll drive her out by force." Voices rose in agreement. "Drive her away. Burn her hut. Cleanse the village." Plans were made. Tomorrow night, they would march to Mom and Kiru's dwelling and force her to leave Okara forever. If she refused, they would destroy everything she owned. Sister Ruth found Ngozi drawing water. "Child, you must stay away from that place tomorrow night. The men are angry. I fear violence." "I can't abandon her," Ngozi said quietly. "You'll be hurt or worse. Then I'll be hurt." Ngozi met Sister Ruth's eyes. "My mother used to say that evil triumphs when good people do nothing. I'm tired of doing nothing." The next evening, as the sun set red over Okara, Ngozi positioned herself at Mom and Kiru's doorway. She could hear the villagers coming, their voices growing louder, torches blazing in the dusk. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her feet stayed planted. The crowd appeared, Chief Okafor at the front, his face twisted with righteousness. Behind him came dozens of villagers, including Pastor Samuel and Grace, all carrying weapons or torches. "Move aside, girl," the chief commanded. "No, sir. This is your last chance. Move or be moved." Ngozi stood firm, though every instinct screamed to run. Behind her, she heard Mom and Kiru's soft voice. "Brave child. The choice is always harder than the consequence." The crowd surged forward, and Ngozi closed her eyes, waiting for the blow. But something stopped them, a change in the air, a pressure that made everyone pause. The wind picked up, cold and sudden, carrying with it the smell of rain though the sky had been clear moments before. "Move!" Chief Okafor roared, reaching for Ngozi. But before his hand could touch her, the first drops fell. Not gentle rain, but a deluge, as if the sky itself had opened. And in the distance, thunder rolled with a sound like divine laughter. The rain came with fury. Within seconds, the villagers were drenched, torches sputtering and dying in the downpour. Chief Okafor grabbed Ngozi's arm, yanking her aside. "You're coming with me. Both of you are banished from this village." Lightning split the sky, so close the thunder was instantaneous. The bolt struck the ground mere feet from where Chief Okafor stood, leaving a smoking crater. He stumbled back, his face pale. "This is her doing," Grace shrieked, pointing at Mom and Kiru. "The witch is calling down lightning." Sister Ruth and several women pushed forward through the rain. "Chief, please. Ngozi is just a young woman. She has nowhere to go. She made her choice." The chief's voice competed with the storm. "She chose the witch over her own people." Another lightning bolt, closer this time. The villagers scattered, screaming. But Mom and Kiru's hut stood untouched, as if an invisible shield protected it from the tempest. "Look!" someone shouted. "The witch's house isn't even getting wet." Indeed, while rain pounded everything else, Mom and Kiru's dwelling remained dry, the storm parting around it like water around a stone. Elder Joseph, the oldest man in the village, pushed through the crowd, his ancient eyes wide with recognition. "The old stories," he breathed. "My grandmother told me. Divine visitors walk among us in humble form, testing our hearts." "Superstitious nonsense," Chief Okafor snarled, though fear flickered in his eyes. The storm intensified, wind howling through the village. Trees bent nearly double, and in the distance came a terrible cracking sound. Someone ran up, gasping. "Chief! Your new barn, the one you just built. Lightning struck it. It's burning." Chief Okafor's face went purple with rage. He whirled on Mom and Kiru. "You'll pay for this, witch. If not today, then soon. This isn't over." "No," Mom and Kiru said softly, her voice somehow carrying over the storm. "It isn't over. But perhaps it's closer to ending than you think." The chief led his people back toward the village, leaving Ngozi and Mom and Kiru alone in the storm. As soon as the crowd disappeared, the rain began to ease. Within minutes, it stopped completely, stars appearing in the suddenly clear sky. Ngozi stared at the old woman. "What just happened?" "A storm, child. Nothing more." But Mom and Kiru's eyes held that knowing gleam again. "That wasn't just a storm. Your hut is completely dry." The lightning struck exactly where Chief Okafor stood. The universe has its ways of protecting those who deserve protection. Mom and Kiru placed a wrinkled hand on Ngozi's shoulder. "Not all who wander are lost, child. Some walk the earth to test hearts, to see who would show mercy to the powerless, kindness to the despised." "I don't understand." "You will in time." Mom and Kiru smiled. "But first, you must rest. You've been very brave tonight." They went inside, and Ngozi lay on the mat, exhausted and confused. Outside, the sky remained clear, as if the storm had never happened. But in the village, Chief Okafor's barn smoldered in ruins, and his anger burned even hotter. The chief wouldn't forget this night. And as Ngozi drifted towards sleep, she heard Mom and Kiru's whispered words. "The test continues, child. The hardest parts are yet to come. But you won't face them alone." In the darkness, the old woman's eyes glowed softly, ancient and patient, watching over the girl who had chosen compassion when everyone else chose cruelty. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, Ngozi slept peacefully, protected by forces she couldn't yet comprehend. 3 days after the storm, Ngozi fell ill. She'd been caught in the rain while fetching water, and by evening, fever ravaged her body. Grace refused to let her rest in the compound. "Get out," she'd said coldly. "Take your sickness elsewhere. We don't need your curses here." Ngozi stumbled through the village, shivering despite the heat burning through her. No one would help. Doors closed as she approached, faces turning away. Only when she collapsed near Mom and Kiru's hut did anyone come. The old woman carried Ngozi inside with surprising strength, laying her on the mat and covering her with thin blankets. For 3 days, Ngozi hovered between life and death, her fever spiking and falling in waves. During those days, she had visions. She saw Mom and Kiru standing in brilliant white light, her form radiant and ageless, surrounded by power that made the air shimmer. She saw herself as if from above, small and fragile on the mat. She saw her parents, smiling and beckoning, but something pulled her back. On the 3rd evening, the fever broke. Ngozi opened her eyes to find Mom and Kiru sitting beside her, unchanged as always. "Welcome back, child." "I had strange dreams," Ngozi whispered, her throat dry. "Sometimes fever brings visions." Mom and Kiru helped her drink water. "Sometimes it shows us truth we're not ready to see." As Ngozi recovered over the following days, she noticed something odd. She could read the newspapers now without struggling, understanding words that should have been beyond her. Math problems solved themselves in her head. It was as if knowledge had been poured into her mind while she slept. "How is this possible?" she asked Mom and Kiru. "Knowledge was always inside you, child. Sometimes illness strips away the barriers we build against our own potential." One evening, as Ngozi regained her strength, a soft knock came at the door. Mom and Kiru opened it to reveal Obioma, Ngozi's friend since youth who'd been avoiding her for months. "I can't stay," Obioma said quickly, glancing around nervously. My parents would kill me if they knew I was here. But Ngozi, I had to warn you. Chief Okafor is planning something terrible. I heard my father talking with the other men. They're going to force you and Mom and Kiru out during the next village meeting. They might hurt you both. When? Ngozi asked. Tomorrow. Please, just leave tonight. Go somewhere safe. After Obioma hurried away, Ngozi turned to Mom and Kiru. We should go. We could travel to the next village, start over. Run from those who need to learn. Mom and Kiru shook her head. No, child. Some lessons must be taught, whether those learning want the instruction or not. That night, Mom and Kiru began teaching Ngozi in earnest, speaking of ancient wisdom. She talked about justice and mercy, about how the universe keeps accounts even when humans forget. She spoke of divine balance, of how every action creates ripples that eventually return to their source. You never eat, Ngozi observed suddenly. In all the time I've brought you food, I've never actually seen you eat it. And you never sleep. I wake up, and you're always sitting exactly as you were. Old people need less, Mom and Kiru said with a mysterious smile. That's not an answer. No, it isn't. But some answers must wait for their proper time. Ngozi studied the old woman in the lamplight. There was something otherworldly about her, something that went beyond the strangeness of never eating or sleeping. Her eyes held depths that seemed to go on forever. Her words carried weight that lingered long after they were spoken. Who are you really? Ngozi whispered. I am someone who walks paths others cannot see, child. Someone who tests and measures and weighs the hearts of humanity. I am someone who has been waiting a very long time for a soul like yours. I don't understand. You will. Tomorrow at the gathering, all will become clear. Sleep now. You'll need your strength. But Ngozi couldn't sleep. She lay awake, watching Mom and Kiru sit motionless in the darkness, her eyes reflecting moonlight in a way that human eyes shouldn't. Tomorrow would bring answers, or perhaps more questions. Either way, Ngozi sensed that her life was approaching a turning point, a moment that would change everything. Outside, the night was quiet. But in the village, men gathered in Chief Okafor's compound, making plans, sharpening their resolve. They would rid themselves of the witch and her orphan follower once and for all. What they didn't know was that they weren't preparing to banish an old woman. They were preparing to face something far beyond their understanding. The village square filled with people as the sun climbed high. Chief Okafor stood on the raised platform usually reserved for important announcements, his chest puffed with authority. Beside him stood Pastor Samuel and the village elders, their faces grave. People of Okara. The chief's voice boomed. We gather today to discuss our village's future. As you know, we're launching a development project, a new market that will bring prosperity to us all. Murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. Ngozi stood at the back with Mom and Kiru, feeling eyes on them, hostile and cold. This project requires everyone's contribution, Chief Okafor continued. Each household must pay their share by month's end. Those who cannot contribute will forfeit their land to the village collective. Elder Joseph raised his hand. Chief, some families have nothing to give. What of them? Then they should leave and make room for those who can contribute to our progress. Chief Okafor's eyes swept the crowd, landing on Ngozi and Mom and Kiru. Some among us are dead weight, bringing nothing but trouble and misfortune. Pastor Samuel stepped forward. The Bible teaches us to be productive members of society. Perhaps those who cannot contribute should voluntarily depart, making room for God's blessings to flow. Sister Ruth pushed through the crowd. This is wrong. Ngozi is an orphan child. She has nothing because we've given her nothing. And Mom and Kiru is an old woman. What can you expect from her? She's brought nothing but curses. Grace shrieked. My goat died. The chief's barn burned. Since she arrived, nothing but trouble. Then let her prove she's not cursed, Chidi called out mockingly. If her God protects her as that orphan girl claims, let him send a sign. Let something happen by sunset to show we're wrong." The crowd murmured in agreement. Chief Okafor smiled, sensing victory. "Well said, my son. Old woman, you have until sunset. Show us a sign that you deserve to stay in Okara. Show us your God's favor, if you have it." All eyes turned to Mom and Kiru. The old woman stood quietly, her face serene, saying nothing. The silence stretched uncomfortably. "Nothing to say?" Chief Okafor taunted. "No defense. No prayers to your gods." "I need no defense," Mom and Kiru said softly. "And the divine needs no summoning. It simply is, whether acknowledged or denied." "Riddles." The chief laughed. "Always riddles. People of Okara, you see? Empty words from an empty vessel. I declare that by sunset tomorrow, both the witch and the orphan must leave our village. If they refuse, we will. Please." Sister Ruth's voice cracked. "At least let Ngozi stay. She's done nothing wrong except show kindness." "Kindness to evil is itself evil," Pastor Samuel intoned. Ngozi felt tears burning her eyes, not for herself but for the injustice of it all. Beside her, Mom and Kiru remained calm, her hand resting lightly on Ngozi's shoulder. "Let them decide," the old woman whispered. "Let them show who they truly are." Elder Joseph spoke again, his aged voice carrying authority. "In my grandmother's time, there were stories. Stories of divine beings who walked among us in humble forms, testing our hearts. She said to be careful how we treat strangers and the powerless, for we might be entertaining angels unaware." "Old wives' tales," Chief Okafor scoffed. "This is the modern age. We make our own destiny. Do we?" Mom and Kiru's question was soft but somehow filled the entire square. "Or do we simply reveal what was always inside us, given the chance?" The gathering dissolved into arguments, some supporting the chief's decision, others like Sister Ruth and Elder Joseph speaking for mercy. But the majority supported banishment. Fear and superstition had won over compassion. As the crowd dispersed, Ngozi walked with Mom and Kiru back toward the hut. "We could leave tonight," she said. "We could go before they force us. And teach them nothing? Let them continue believing their cruelty has no consequence." Mom and Kiru shook her head. "No, child. Tomorrow at sunset, all debts will be balanced. All accounts settled. The universe has been watching, and the universe keeps perfect records." That night, Ngozi prayed desperately, not really knowing who or what she prayed to. She prayed for justice, for protection, for something to happen that would show Chief Okafor and the others that kindness mattered, that treating people with cruelty had consequences. Mom and Kiru sat in her usual spot, unmoving, her eyes reflecting starlight. "Sleep, child. Tomorrow changes everything." But how could tomorrow change anything? They were powerless, two outcasts against an entire village. What could possibly happen by sunset to shift the balance? Ngozi didn't know that tomorrow would bring a stranger to Okara. She didn't know that the universe was already moving pieces into place. And she certainly didn't know that Mom and Kiru's patience was nearly at an end, that divine judgment had been postponed but never forgotten. Tomorrow at sunset, the test would reach its conclusion. And Okara village would learn what it meant to fail. The stranger arrived at noon, when the sun beat down mercilessly on Okara's dusty roads. He drove a sleek car that made villagers stop and stare, his suit crisp despite the heat. He stopped at the square and asked, "I'm looking for a girl named Ngozi." "Ngozi Obi." Word spread quickly. A rich man from Lagos asking for the orphan girl? Chief Okafor hurried to the square, smelling opportunity. "I am the village chief. Why do you seek this girl?" "My name is Mr. Johnson," the stranger said. 16 years ago, I was in a terrible accident on the Lagos-Benin road. A man stopped and pulled me from my burning car, saved my life. That man was Ngozi's father, Mr. Obi. I've been searching for his family ever since to repay the debt. A murmur went through the growing crowd. Grace appeared, suddenly solicitous. Oh, poor Ngozi. We've been caring for her like our own daughter since her parents' death. Such a tragic loss. Mr. Johnson's eyes were shrewd. Is that so? Then where is she now? Probably at our compound resting. Grace lied smoothly. We give her light duties, of course, considering her situation. I was told she works as a housemaid. Mr. Johnson's voice was neutral, but his eyes hardened. I was told she sleeps in your kitchen. Before Grace could answer, Ngozi appeared at the edge of the crowd, drawn by news of a stranger asking for her. Mr. Johnson's face softened when he saw her threadbare clothing, her too thin frame. Ngozi Obi, he asked gently. Yes, sir. Your father saved my life. I owe him everything, and since he's gone, that debt passes to you. Mr. Johnson knelt to her level. I want to offer you a full scholarship to a private school in Lagos. Room and board, everything provided. You'll have the education your father would have wanted for you. The crowd erupted in whispers. Ngozi stood frozen, unable to process what she was hearing. A scholarship. School. It was everything she'd dreamed of, impossibly offered. There must be some mistake, Chief Okafor said quickly. This girl is trouble. She consorts with a witch, brings bad luck. I'm not asking your opinion, Mr. Johnson cut him off coldly. I'm offering Ngozi a chance at a better life. The decision is hers. Ngozi's eyes filled with tears. But even as joy bloomed in her chest, she thought of Mom and Kiru, alone at the village edge. Sir, I'm grateful, more grateful than you know. But I can't leave. There's someone here who needs me. An old woman everyone treats badly. I can't abandon her. Mr. Johnson studied her face, then smiled. Your father had that same loyalty. Very well. Show me this woman. They walked together through the village, the crowd following like a curious parade. When they reached Mom and Kiru's hut, Mr. Johnson's expression tightened at its dilapidated state. This is how you treat your elders? He asked Chief Okafor. She's not from here, the chief said defensively. She just appeared one day, bringing curses. Enough. Mr. Johnson turned to Mom and Kiru, who stood in her doorway watching with that knowing smile. Ma'am, I'd like to build you a proper house, if you'll allow it, and ensure you have whatever you need. Generous, Mom and Kiru said softly, but unnecessary. My time in Okara is nearly finished. See. She's leaving anyway. Chief Okafor's relief was palpable. Not leaving, Chief, Mom and Kiru corrected. Finishing. There's a difference. Before anyone could ask what she meant, Chief Okafor's face twisted with rage. This is my village. I won't be disrespected by an orphan and a witch and some Lagos businessman. You want to take the girl? Fine. But you'll all leave now before. He lunged forward, his hand raised to strike Ngozi. The crowd gasped. Sister Ruth screamed. Mr. Johnson moved to intervene. But before anyone could react, Mom and Kiru spoke a single word. Enough. The word wasn't loud, but it crashed over the square like a physical force. Chief Okafor froze mid-strike, his arms suspended in air. The ground trembled. The air itself seemed to thicken, pressing down on everyone present. What? Chief Okafor tried to speak, but his voice came out as a whisper. Mom and Kiru stepped forward, and as she walked, something changed. The hunched posture straightened. The wrinkled face grew smooth. Light began emanating from her skin, soft at first, then brighter, until everyone had to shield their eyes. The test, she said, her voice now resonant with power, is over. Elder Joseph fell to his knees, his ancient eyes wide with recognition and terror. The old stories, he breathed. They were true. Mom and Kiru, no longer appearing as a frail old woman, stood in the square radiating light and authority. For 5 years, I have walked among you. Hungry, I begged, and you mocked me. Homeless, I sought shelter, and you threw stones. Weak, I needed help, and you attacked me. Her gaze swept across the frozen crowd. But this child, with nothing to her name, shared her bread. With no power, she stood as my shield. With every reason to hate, she chose love. Chief Okafor tried to back away, but his feet wouldn't move. Around the square, villagers stood paralyzed, watching as judgment finally came to Okara. Tomorrow, Momonkiru said, you will see what mercy truly means, and what justice requires. Light poured from Momonkiru's form, growing brighter until the villagers had to close their eyes against its brilliance. When they looked again, she stood transformed, her true nature finally revealed. Ageless and radiant, she was terrible and beautiful, a being of power that made the air shimmer. I am called by many names, she said, her voice echoing as if spoken in a vast cathedral. I have walked the earth since its foundations were laid, testing the hearts of humanity in every age, in every land. I came to Okara village specifically, drawn by reports of your prosperity and piety. I came to measure the truth of it. Pastor Samuel's face had gone ashen. Grace tried to speak, but no sound came from her throat. Chief Okafor trembled, still frozen in his attempted strike against Ngozi. I was hungry, Momonkiru continued, and most of you mocked me. I was homeless, and you threw stones. I was weak, and you sought to destroy me. Only this child, this orphan with nothing, showed mercy. Only she saw a human being where you saw an inconvenience. Elder Joseph remained on his knees, tears streaming down his weathered face. We failed, he whispered. Forgive us. Some of you will be forgiven, Momonkiru said. Those who spoke for mercy, those who felt discomfort at the cruelty even if they lacked courage to stop it. But others must face consequences. She turned to Chief Okafor. You who had so much, yet showed no compassion. You who used your power to crush the powerless. From this day, your wealth will crumble. Your influence will fade. You will lose everything but your life, so that you may learn the humility you never chose to embrace. Chief Okafor opened his mouth, but only a whimper emerged. Grace, Momonkiru's gaze shifted. Your tongue has been a weapon, your words bringing pain. For 1 year, you will be mute, that you might learn to think before you speak, to consider the weight of cruelty. Grace clutched her throat, eyes wild with fear. Pastor Samuel, who preached love but practiced indifference, who watched suffering and called it discipline. Your position is forfeit. Let another lead, one who understands that faith without compassion is merely noise. The pastor fell to his knees, but no plea would change what had been decreed. But mercy is not only for the innocent, Momonkiru said, her voice softening. Those who showed kindness, even in small ways, will be rewarded. Sister Ruth, your sick child will wake tomorrow, healthy and whole. Your family will prosper. Sister Ruth sobbed with relief and gratitude. Elder Joseph, your wisdom will be honored. Your remaining years will be peaceful, and your words will carry weight they never had before. Obioma, who risked her parents' anger to warn Ngozi, your family's debts will be erased, and opportunities will open before you. The goddess turned to Mr. Johnson. You, stranger, who honored a debt and showed compassion to the powerless, will find your businesses flourishing beyond expectation. Your kindness will return to you tenfold. Finally, she looked at Ngozi, and her expression filled with warmth. And you, child, you are offered a choice. Come with me into divine service, leave humanity behind, and work directly for justice across the earth. Or remain mortal, live your life with my blessing, and serve humanity in your own way. Ngozi's mind reeled. Everything she'd believed about reality had shattered and reformed in these few moments. But looking at Momonkiru, she suddenly understood all the riddles, all the strange moments, all the hints she'd been too human to fully grasp. I want to stay human, Ngozi said quietly. I want to be a teacher. I want to help children who have nothing, show them that kindness matters, that someone cares. But I'll need wisdom to do it right. Mom and Kiru smiled, and it was like sunlight breaking through clouds. Then wisdom you shall have. And protection. And purpose. Go to Lagos with Mr. Johnson. Learn all you can. Then return to places like Okara, and build schools where there are none. Teach children that compassion is strength, not weakness. Show them that the universe remembers every act of kindness and every act of cruelty. She placed a glowing hand on Ngozi's forehead. You will remember this day always. Let it guide you when choosing kindness becomes difficult. Warmth flowed through Ngozi, filling spaces she hadn't known were empty. Knowledge bloomed in her mind, understanding of things she'd never been taught. But more than that, she felt purpose settling into her bones, a certainty about who she was meant to be. Mom and Kiru stepped back, her light beginning to fade. My work in Okara is complete. Remember this day, people of this village. Remember that the stranger you abuse might be more than they seem. Remember that how you treat the powerless reveals your true character. Will we see you again? Ngozi asked. In one form or another, child. I walk many paths in many places. But you carry a piece of me now, a seed of divine purpose. Water it with compassion, and it will grow into something beautiful. The light grew brighter, too bright to look at directly. When it finally faded, Mom and Kiru was gone. The dilapidated hut had vanished with her, leaving only bare ground where it had stood. The villagers stood blinking in the afternoon sun, released from their paralysis but forever changed by what they'd witnessed. Chief Okafor stumbled away, his face hollow with shock. Grace tried to speak, opening and closing her mouth like a fish, but no sound came. Pastor Samuel remained on his knees, broken. Mr. Johnson approached Ngozi gently. Are you ready to go? Yes, Ngozi said, looking around the village one last time. But I'll come back someday. Not to this village specifically, but to places like it. To help children who feel invisible, the way I felt. Sister Ruth embraced her, tears streaming. Your mother would be so proud. As Ngozi walked to Mr. Johnson's car, Elder Joseph called out, Child, what should we tell others about what happened here today? Ngozi paused, thinking of Mom and Kiru's lessons, of everything she'd learned. Tell them the truth. Tell them that a goddess walked among you, testing your hearts. Tell them that most of you failed, but one orphan girl passed. Tell them that kindness to strangers might mean entertaining angels unaware. And tell them to choose mercy, always, because someone is always watching. The car pulled away, leaving Okara village behind. But Ngozi's story was just beginning. She would go to school, excel in her studies, become a teacher. She would build schools in forgotten villages, help children others had abandoned, show them that they mattered. Years later, people would speak of Ngozi Obi, the educator who started her mission as a teenager, who built schools across Nigeria for orphans and outcasts. They would speak of her unusual wisdom, her seemingly inexhaustible compassion, her ability to see the best in every child. Some would say she'd been touched by something divine. They would be right. And sometimes, in the small schools she built, teachers would report seeing an old woman watching from the shadows, smiling as children learned and laughed. She never spoke, never stayed long. But her presence felt like blessing, like approval, like a promise that someone was always watching over those who chose kindness in a cruel world. The universe keeps accounts, and the universe remembers. In Okara village, they learned that lesson the hard way. But in schools across Nigeria, children were learning it the way Mom and Kiru had always intended. Through love, through wisdom, through the example of one girl who'd refused to let the world make her cruel. And that, after all, was the whole point. If you enjoyed this story of kindness, courage, and divine justice, please subscribe to Folktales by Inaya for more inspiring African folktales and moral stories. New stories shared regularly. Don't miss out on the next powerful lesson.